Welcome to part 1 of the red marbles. This project has been created with soft pastel and pastel pencil on light green pastel mat. I'm using a Carbothello 726 coal gray pastel pencil to outline the top of the first marble. I'm going to make it a little darker by using my 750 black Carbothello, or you can use a 770 Payne's Gray. I just want to be able to see it a little better. Now, using the 726 Coal Gray number 4 Carbothello, I'm filling in, avoiding the highlight area on the top of the marble, but I'm adding some color to this top area that's above the first red stripe. Now I'm using some 770 NuPastel, which has got kind of a purpley cast to it, to shade the area as it begins to turn down and round. And I'm going to blend that in with my little blender, and that helps the marble to appear round. Now I'm continuing working in this area with the 726 Coal Gray. I'm coming back with the 770 Payne's Gray and adding some more color to the top edge of my marble. And use the blender to blend it in. Now I want this to be brighter at the top, so I'm using a Mount Vision 457 warm gray to add some bright color to the top of this marble. It looks white, but it's not. It's a gray, but it's nice and bright. So I'm going to blend it in to the layers that we've put underneath. Here I'm adding some 720 Coal Gray 1 Carbothello to kind of blend the edges of the Mount Vision bright warm gray that we put in, and to go around the brightest highlight areas at the very top of the marble. Here I'm adding a little more shading to my marble with Carbothello 726 Coal Gray number 4, and I'm also going around those highlight areas, and I'm going to blend those in with my blender. If you color outside the line a little bit and you want to get that color off, use a kneaded eraser. You can use a plastic eraser, such as a tri-tip, but sometimes that damages the pastel mat. So be careful when you're trying to take pastel off. I'm adding a little more dark gray and blending that in. And now I'm going to outline the marble with the 750 black Carbothello. And here I'm continuing to add a little more dark gray and a little more of the Mount Vision 457 warm gray until I achieve the look that I want for my marble. So you can add more color or not. If you like the way your marble looks, then don't add any more pastel to it. I just keep working with it until I get it to look round. By adding darks on the edges, that creates the illusion of roundness and making it lighter in the middle. This is the Carbothello 100 white. I'm using it to color in the brightest highlight at the very top of the marble. And I'm going to add a little teeny bit of Diane Townsend number 10 white into that highlight area. You can see I kind of messed that up a little bit, so I'm going to take it off with my kneaded eraser. Diane Townsend number 10 is the brightest white that you can get. So I made mine a little big, but we can correct that with a pastel pencil and get our highlight just perfect. I'm using some Carbothello 100 white to even up the edge of this top area above the first red stripe. It also lightens it and helps to create the illusion of roundness. There is a small gray stripe between the two red stripes, so I'm filling in the center of that with 720 cold gray number 1, and then on the outside edges I'm using Carbothello 722 cold gray number 2 because it's a little darker, and that again creates our illusion of roundness. add a little Carbothello 100 white over that to brighten it. Beginning our first red stripe, I'm outlining the stripe with Conte number 3 Vermilion. It's a nice true red. And then after I outline it, I'm going to fill it in with Rembrandt 372.5 permanent red and blend that with the blender. Wear gloves when you're working with all shades of red. It seems to get everywhere, and you can end up inadvertently carrying it to other pieces of your painting there where you don't want it to be. So be very careful with your red. The red edge with my gray Carbothello pencil. To intensify the red, I'm going to go over the number 3 Conte with the Conte 39 Garnet Red. Using more than one color helps to give depth to your colors, and we can intensify it, make it brighter, and that's what the 39 does. I'm not covering the entire strip, mainly just in the middle. On the very top edge of this stripe, I'm using Conte 12, which is orange, to make this brighter and add an orange tint up the top. I'm putting a little more of that orange down towards the bottom. You can even up your edges with a gray pencil. Now I'm using Conte 19 purple and Carbothello 330 purple to add a darker red at the bottom edge of the stripe. I'm evening up the top with the Carbothello white. Here I'm adding a little more orange. And a little more Conte number 3, which is vermilion. Now I'm starting the second stripe. I'm outlining it with the Conte number 3. I'm going to do this one the exact same way I painted the first one. I'm adding that little strip of gray that's in there with 722 gold gray number 2, and outlining it with the Conte 3. I've decided to make the orange a little brighter in the top stripe, so I'm going over it with number 14 gold yellow Conte pencil. I'm filling in the second stripe with the Rembrandt 372.5 permanent red, and then I'll blend it with the blender. I didn't coat it first with the Conte 3 vermilion. I decided this would probably be okay on its own to give that first layer of red, because we're going to be adding other red on top of it. I'm using Garnet Red, number 39, to enrich and strengthen this area and brighten it up. Over that red at the top edge, I'm using the orange, number 12 Conte, to add the orange color that's there, and then I'm going over that with the number 14 gold yellow. Adding more garnet, number 39, at the bottom of this stripe. Here I'm using Conte number 19 purple to make it a little darker, right in the center of the stripe. Adding brighter color with number 14 gold yellow, and just finger blending it. Now the area directly underneath the red stripe, I'm filling that in with the same colors we used before. This is Carbothello 722 gray, which is kind of a medium value gray, evening up the edges. And I'm going to blend that with my blender after I add a little bit of 457 Mount Vision. I'm adding a darker gray around the bottom with 726 Carbothello. And blending that in with my blender. Now I'm drawing a black line, outlining the very bottom of the marble with 750 Carbothello black. Adding just a little bit to shade and blend into the bottom shape. I'm always adding something to adjust it to make it exactly like I want it to be. So I'm going to use my little blender to blend that darker color and create that roundness that we're looking for. Going to add white with Carbothello 100. And here I'm using a little bit of 770 Payne's Gray. And a little at the top, make it a little bit darker. Moving on to the bottom shape, I'm outlining it with 750 Carbothello black. Now I've used my 750 to outline some shapes that I see in my reference drawing, and I'm going to fill in those shapes on the bottom right with a darker gray, 726 coal gray. I'm using the 770 Payne's Gray to fill in the first shape on the left side. Add several black shapes into that Payne's Gray area and blend with your blender. Using 750, let's darken that shape a little bit more. And the next shape, let's darken it with the black as well. Now using Carbothello 100, the white, we'll mark off some white shapes next to the black ones. Draw in color another little shape with the black 750. This is 722 Carbothello to make medium value grays and outline that with the 750 black. and darken it with 726. Over the 726, add some 770. Fill in the bottom highlight by outlining it with 100 Carbothello. Color that in. That's going to be your brightest highlight. Add a little Diane Townsend number 10. That's what I'm holding in my hand. You can't see. But add that in as your brightest light. Now I'm using the tip of the Diane Townsend to add some little sprinkles of bright white to represent reflections in our marble. That helps to add to the realistic appearance. Smoothing out some of the red with my Rembrandt. And that's looking pretty good. The reflection is divided into several different sections, and we'll work them all separately. I'm outlining the first section with 750 Carbothello Black, and I'm also going to be using 770 Payne's Gray. So I'm outlining the entire reflection first, and then we'll work on the different sections. I've drawn off the first section, and that's all on your pattern, the different sections and where they are located. And I'm filling it in with 770 Payne's Gray. I'm going to use my blender to blend the Payne's Gray into the surface of the paper. Now to that, we're going to add a little more on the edge, making it darker, and up underneath the marble. Adding a little 726 gray. Using 750 black, darken the outside edges and get it very dark. Blend that in, use your blender, or you can finger blend. Now the marble reflects into the shadow. So to make that, we're going to use Conte number 3 vermilion and draw in some red right up underneath the marble and blend that in to the reflection. Add more color as needed and blend that in, and be sure and refer to your reference photo. You can see it's quite bright. I love the way that looks. Keep your edges even. To add the brighter reflection in the center, put down a little 720 gray first, and then over that, add some 100 white Carbothello and finger blend that in to your reflection. Adjust the colors as needed, add more red if you need that. And if the edges need to be darker, add more black. Here I'm using Carbothello 670 Burnt Sienna. I've outlined my reflection with orange, Conte Orange number 12, and now I'm using the Burnt Sienna in the center of the little band that separates the different parts of the reflection. Adding a little more red. Down in this little band, I'm going to add red over the burnt sienna as I move outward from the center. And then on the very edges of the outside, I'm going to use Carbothello 750 all the way to the edge. I'm going to blend that together with the 770 and then finger blend it together from there. So it's not distinct, it kind of works together, and a little bit of black on the outside edge. Brighten the edges of these little separation bands with the Conte Orange number 12 first, and over that the number 14 gold. And I'm bearing down pretty hard and widening that little area. It almost looks like a sunset, the way the colors are divided. It's quite pretty. Now in this second one from the top that I'm working on, I'm adding 726 Cold Gray 4 and a light gray. This is a pit pastel number 230. I rather like the pits, and I'm using a fairly loose application. I'm blending some 726 on the outside edge. So I want it to look rather streaky. I'm putting a few streaks of the 230 pit light gray up into the first band as well. Just kind of go over it a little bit with my finger. And now I'm going to use the 100 Carbocello white to add some white streaks into the band, the second band down. I'm adding 670 burnt sienna, and also I'm going to use a little bit of Conte red as needed on those outside edges. I'm darkening outside edges with a 750 black and evening that up as we move downward. For this next section, I'm using 230 Pitt light gray and 726 cold gray number 4 to put in a sketchy application of color. Add in some burnt sienna, 670 Carbocello. Again, using a sketchy movement. I'm using 770 Payne's Gray as I move towards the outside edges, and then on the very outside, I use 750 black. Strengthen the line with the orange, number 12. Conte and add some burnt sienna, 670, over top of it. Blend it in. Using the gold yellow number 14 to brighten up these little sparkly bands. I just love this. This is a new color for me, but it's really pretty. Fill in this next stripe with Carbothello 670. Add some number 3 Conte Vermilion Red. Blend that together with your blender. And then use the black 750 on the outside edges. Blend the edges inward with your little blender. Brighten up with white. Carbothello 100 is needed. On this last section, we're going to start off with the orange number 12. And here I'm adding some burnt sienna 670 on the outside edges of the band above that. If you see something that needs to be done, but you're already working in another section, go back and fix it because you'll forget it if you don't. So I added that 670 before moving onward. Finish the bottom of your reflection by filling it in with 726 coal gray and add dark colors with 750 black, particularly near the outside edges. Use a little 770 Payne's gray and your Pitt 230 cold gray to make some little streaks. see you for part 2, where we're going to paint the red marble.